lesson 8, and I have been requested to like not go flying through the last of it. So today, yes, I should have just waited, but maybe I'll get to the beginning. I don't know. I think get to the beginning of lesson 8, but anyway, we're on the last half of lesson 7. So for the sake of people who are watching, and that it's not totally confusing to Jonathan, I put it lesson 7B. I didn't know how else to do it. Either that, or I had to tell everybody to change all the numbers, and today 8 and next week 9. You know, so anyway, that was. It was one of my biggest confusions was how do I number this? What do I do with this? Well, we're on chapter 24, and it starts off with extra instructions for them on making the oil and the bread. And I thought, okay, this is a good time, since I'm spreading the lessons a little bit, to cover what's going on inside the tabernacle, inside here, and what that is. And most of you probably know this, but a review is always helpful, right? All right, so if you're in the tabernacle, and assuming this is north, and this is east, and this is south, and this is west, this is exactly how it would be set up. Right here, of course, I didn't draw it perfect, because this is a perfect square. So here, there. Okay, now it's better. And maybe this one isn't, this is probably only this long. Right. Okay, so now you can find out that I have a tendency to be a perfectionist, and I can't get over things that aren't just like, okay, almost right? So here is the door going in, and they go in this way. Here is the wash basin called the laver. Here is the altar. It's also square. I tend to always think of it rectangular because that's how I picture an altar, but it's not. And then here's the courtyard, like that. And here's the entranceway for the people when they go in, like that. Yeah, let's get that up there. Okay, so as you walk in, this is called the holy place. And this is called the Holy of Holies. On this side is a table. It's not very big. It's maybe like this, maybe like this, about that high, okay? It's just a table sitting there. It's made of wood, covered with gold, and this is where they place the bread. And I'm just going to draw 2 circles, and what that is, it's like 6 pieces piled, okay? So it's like 6 loaves of bread piled on top of each other on each of these, and then there's another pile over here. That would be, you know, like that, all right? 6. Great, look at that bread. And it's piled right there. And there's poles to carry it. And then here's the candlestick that's on the south side. It's on the north side. And here's the altar of incense. And in here, here's the curtain. And right here is the Ark of the Covenant, and that has the angel standing up, and there's the mercy seat. Okay, so you got all that? Okay, so it tells us that there's a special recipe for making the oil. You got to do it just right. It's got to be perfect. And there's an exact formula. Most of that is in Exodus. in the planning of the thing. The priest comes in and every morning he pours the oil into these lamps, refills the lamps. He does it one at a time so that there's only one out. So that as he's doing the rotation, because the light can never go out. So he does that every morning. He has to clean the wicks. There's very specific, precise details. You're gonna take the wick out, you're gonna clean the burnt part off of the wick, you're gonna refill the oil, you're gonna put the wick back in, you're gonna go to the next one and do that. It's not like it's a hollow thing where they can pour it in and it just goes and fills. For some reason, as a kid, that's what I thought. I had this idea that it was this hollow thing, and at some point they just poured it all oil and it just kept burning. And no, that's not what it is. So that they have to refill it and relight every morning, every evening. And that is done. One of the things. That's when it says, so if you look at Leviticus 24, it's going to talk about going in there and you got to use beaten olives. You got to use this precise, very perfect thing. So he goes in there and does that. And then once a week, they make all this bread. So just to give you a clue, it's unleavened bread. So and it takes about 4 quarts per loaf.
Wow.
Okay, so if you've ever made bread, I can make a loaf of bread with 4 cups. That's 1 quart. Okay, so my recipe makes 2 loaves. It takes 8 cups. So, all right. So that would be like putting 4 loaves into 1 loaf. That's how big these things are. They're not like these cute little things. They're pretty darn big, and they're made without leaven, so they probably are only maybe so thick, but there's 12 of them. They go through a fairly good amount of flour every week to make all this. And it just like, for some reason, just getting the volume of it, that helps my brain picture what's going on in there. And the next coolest thing is that the bread doesn't go stale. So it sits in there. If I had bread sitting out, I don't care if it's leavened or unleavened bread, I had bread sitting out for a week, it would be dry and crusty because it's not in the Ziploc bag, right? All right, they don't have Ziploc bags, so it's not covered with Ziploc bags. So it doesn't go moldy, and it doesn't go dry, and it doesn't go stale. And at the end of the week, on the Sabbath, it's changed every Sabbath, at the end of the week, they bring in, at the beginning of each new week, they bring in 12 new loaves and take the old 12 loaves out, and that becomes the food for the priests. And those 12 loaves will feed about 24 priests. So that's approximately how much food that is. And that's part of their food that they are provided for each week. And the rest of their food is provided for their parts of the offering. Remember, every priest gets a part of the, they get a part of the offering. So that's where the rest of that is. So that's that. And then on top of each loaf is, and I don't know if it's in a little bowl or if it's just dumped there, but is a pile of frankincense. Okay, so I looked all over. I go, okay, because everything means something. So tell me what the pile of frankincense means on top. Because I kind of have a picture of what the lamps mean, and I'll get to that. And I kind of have a picture of what this means. And here's where they put there's the hot coals and the incense, and the smell goes up. Okay. But I wasn't sure what the frankincense meant on top of the loaves, and I couldn't find a real solid answer. I found a little bit of an answer, but it smells good, and the bread, every one of these things represent Jesus Christ. Okay, so the bread represents Jesus Christ, the light represents Jesus Christ, this represents Jesus Christ, this represents Jesus Christ. So he is the bread of life, remember that? That is John 6:35. And this goes up as a fragrant aroma. So here he is as the bread of life, and the fragrant aroma makes intercession for us. So that was the best picture I found on that one. If I find like, oh man, that's the one, I will let you know. But that's as far as I got on what the incense means. I mean, what frankincense means. It was also given to him at his birth. Frankincense was the spice that was used by the priests. Myrrh was what they embalmed people with. And gold was what you gave a king. So at his birth, they gave him the gift of a king, the gift of a priest, and they presented his entire work here by being embalmed to be raised again. So that's what those, I thought that was really cool. Those aren't just 3 random gifts, you know. And so that was really cool. So Jesus is the bread of life. When he told that story, it follows the feeding of the 5,000. And so he fed the 5,000, and then he has to, do you remember that was the night he had to get on the boat and cross the thing, and he walks on water, and this all happens within 24 hours. And yeah, if I was on that boat, my mind would just be blown, because I just watched 5 little biscuit loaves and 2 fish feed an abundance of people, and now he's walking on water, and we're dying because we're expert fishermen, and we know this lake inside and out, and we can't control it and can't survive it. We're, you know, they're ready to sink, and here he comes, and then Peter gets out, and I don't know, I would just be like, my head would be swirling. Okay, so we get to the other side, and the people who were amazed by the food followed all the way around. They went by land and followed all the way around to the other side. I should do it backwards. He was, I think, on the east side of the Sea of Galilee when he fed the 5,000, I'm guessing, and they crossed it, and they're following over to here. So I'll do it like that. Anyway, I like to picture it. I like to picture it to you guys perfect. They want more food. They want more food. Oh, man, we don't have to work. We're just going to have food. This is one great kingdom. Everything's free. Everything's provided. It's play all the time. They want more food. And that's what he says, I am the bread of life. And they go, no, we want food. Actual food. We want to hold the bread. We want to eat it. We want our tummies filled. And many of them left him at that moment. His huge following left him because, and I was thinking, they're not putting their own pictures together. They're not putting their own pictures together. This is also the bread that David came to get. Do you remember when he was fleeing from Saul? And he goes up into Nob, and it's where the tabernacle is at the moment, because this is before the temple was built, and the priests are there, and he's fleeing, and it's the only bread they have at the moment. And he goes, well, you have to give me that. Well, that is not right. So, and if you go read those commentaries on that, half of the people think David was legitimate in doing that. The other half think no. So I'll have to let you know on that one, because it's a toss-up as to whether he is excused or he is not excused. But I kind of feel like, since the result was every single one of those priests got killed except for one who ran away, I kind of feel like maybe that wasn't the right thing. But that's all just some stories about the bread. There's other stories about the bread. There's the manna, and all those things pictured together. So Jesus is often refers to himself as the bread. So that one you probably know. He also is the light of the world, and that's related to this guy, to the menorah. In Egypt, in Israel right now, they're preparing for their new temple. They've got things built for their new temple when they get to take down the Dome of the Rock and put their temple up. And they already have their menorah ready, and it's sitting in a big glass case outside, and you get to go look at this. I don't know, how big was it, Martha? 15-foot menorah, something like that? Huge menorah. And it, yeah, you just get this beautiful gold menorah.
Just saw a picture of that the other day. It's huge.
It's huge.
Huge, and it's all gold.
It's all gold, solid
my
gold.
God,
It's
it's
one
crazy.
expensive thing.
Yes.
Yes, yes,
Cool.
yes. This was the, when Nebuchadnezzar came in and conquered Israel, Judea. This is what's carried off, and this is what's carried off. When you look at the Arch of Titus in Rome, this one's up there too. Both, they've got the soldiers carrying both of these off. It's just that this one is harder to see in the carving. This one is easier to see. So you see them carrying off the menorah. That was like looking at an ancient photograph of the moment, you know? To me, that was really something to know that they carried that off when they just rolled. Okay, so here is the altar of incense. And the incense, as it goes up, is a pleasing aroma to God. And that's the intercession of the priest, but it's also our prayers. And that's described in Revelation and in a couple places. So that's where they came in with their fire pans and their incense. That's what, not Nadab and Abihu, that's what Dathan and, shoot, what's the other guy's name? Anyway, Korah, Dathan, and other, they wanted all to burn the fire pans, right? So they all got their own little gold fire pans or their incense burners, whatever, and they stand there and they tell Moses that we're all priests, so we all get to go in there. And they're within one generation of Nadab and Abihu going in, so you would think that there's a little fear going on, but no, they're demanding their rights. So and Dathan and can't think of the other guy's name. They are from the tribe of Reuben, and Korah is from the tribe of Levi, so he gets to be one of the, not the Aaron, but one of the other people who like carry the ark and stuff like that. So his tribe, I'm trying to think if he was Kohathites or what, but his tribe, one of his main things that his branch did was to guard the gates. And they thought that was diminishing. So he didn't get to be the fancy priest that goes inside. He had to be the guy that guarded the gates, or he had to be the guy that brought in the wood, or whatever that was. He had to do that. So here's the story it goes. It's a really cool story. So they decide they're going to burn the incense inside here. And he said, and Aaron and Moses go to God, and God says, everybody bring their staff, write their name on their staff. The leaders of each tribe will put it in front of the tabernacle, probably out right here, I'm guessing, or maybe it was in here because Moses could do it, but I don't know. And then whichever one, a staff is a dead piece of wood. It's not going to do anything. Okay, you can carve your name in it, and that's the end of it. Whichever one buds and turns to life is the one that is the section that the tribe that gets to go in. And of course, that was Aaron's rod. Okay, immediately afterwards, there's a plague that goes out, and there's also God has the judgment, and He tells everybody to get away from the homes, the tents of Korah, Dathan, and the third guy that I'm not getting his name in. And the sons of Dathan and I think I might even have his name wrong. The sons of the two guys of Reuben stayed with their dad and stayed in the tents. The sons of Korah did not. The sons of Korah left. and went away. So when the earthquake happens and the earth swallows those 3 tents with those 3 families, those 2 families are completely gone because their wives, their kids, everybody stayed with them because they were standing, we get to do this. Sons of Korah did not. They took their wives and their children out of there and they left. So only Korah went down with that one. Now, why would I even tell you all this? Because later in the book of Psalms, the sons of Korah write psalms. And one of those psalms is Psalm 84. And the 10th verse of Psalm 84 says, and I know that I'm just thinking, flashback, they're gotta be thinking this. It says, I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my Lord than to dwell in the tents of evil. And I love how it's kind of like a Paul Harvey thing. Like it's the end of this, what's the rest of the story? How does the story end? What's the point of it all? And here, I don't know, it's just a cool story. Anyway, that's just my story about the thing here. This is the veil. This is embroidered with cherubim and pomegranates and beautiful, it's incredibly beautiful embroidery that nobody ever gets to see. Okay? Incredibly beautiful embroidery that nobody ever gets to see. And I've read several places that it's like the cherubim are guarding the way into the garden at the gate. And when that was torn, that was us getting to go in. So I thought that was a beautiful picture. Inside here is the Ark of the Covenant. I told you about this quite a bit, but it's a wooden box covered with gold. It's got 2 long bars so that you never touch it. On top of it is an empty place, and 2 angels go over the top. I've heard one person teach that 1 angel represents righteousness and 1 angel represents justice. And as they look down, we have the holiness of God sitting and the glory of God sitting there. Inside the ark is eventually, not at this moment in Leviticus, because the story of the rod budding hasn't happened yet, but inside that ark is the 10 Commandments, the stone thing, and a pot of manna, and the rod. And every one of those things are absolutely perfect. And every one of them show our rejection of perfection, our rejection of God's holiness. Because the 10th man's got broken. The pot of manna got, we don't even like it anymore. And obviously Aaron's rod is a rejection of the right authority. So when they sprinkle, so you can see what's inside as God's holiness, but you can also see it as representing man's sin. So now you see the conflict in one box. And then they sprinkle the blood over the top. And you have forgiveness and reconciliation. So I happen to just really love the tabernacle. There's more to it. There's more about the coverings, what's on the inside, there's 3 layers to the covering. There's all kinds of details to it, but that'll get you for a bit. So that's Leviticus right here is just talking about the procedures for maintaining this. So how do you maintain this one? How do you maintain this one? This one isn't covered right at this moment, at this spot. So that I thought was really cool. I also think it's cool that because because the tabernacle is a copy of the real one, I thought it might be fun to go, let's look at the description of the real one. And that's in Revelation. So I'm gonna take you to some, it's not in your notes. I'm going to take you to some places in Revelation and we can look at the different ones. So, chapter 4, in verse 15. Oh, excuse me, verse 5. So I just found as many tabernacle things in Revelation as I could, and I thought I'd show it to you, okay? So in verse 5, out from the throne comes flashes of lightning and sounds and peals of thunder, and there were 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. And it kind of reminds me of Mount Sinai, with the mountain and the thunder and the lightning and all that, and the 7 lamps. And often this has been represented as the Holy Spirit. Okay? That's really cool. Yeah. All right, so look down just a few verses to verse 8. Is that right? 4:8? I don't think I have that one right. No, let's go to, the incense? No, let's go down to 5:8. That's what it is. I wrote the wrong chapter down. And when he had taken the book, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb. One was holding a harp, and the other golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. So I thought that was cool. So that's that one. 7:15. For this reason they are before the throne of God, and they serve him day and night in his temple, and he who sits on the throne will spread his tabernacle over them. I thought that was kind of cool. That's 7:15, 8, 3, and 4. Another angel came and stood at the altar holding a golden censer, and much incense was given to him so that he might add to it the prayers of all the saints on the golden altar which is before the throne. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints went up before God out of the angel's hand. Isn't that beautiful? Have you ever pictured your prayers as being held in a censer by an angel, offered to God, and he breathes it as sweet incense, a sweet aroma? I mean, how would we even get to be in such a position to do something like that? Isn't that cool, though? Okay, let's see here. 9:13. The 6th angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar which is before the Lord. That's actually the beginning of one of the sets of plagues, but it's still before the golden altar. 11, 1 and 2. Then there was given me a measuring rod like a staff, and someone said, "Get up and measure the temple of God and the altar and those who worship in it. Leave out the court which is outside the temple and do not measure it, for it has been given to the nations." So just the description of measuring how big this thing is. Thought that was neat. 11:19, look at this one. And the temple of God which is in heaven was opened, and the ark of his covenant appeared in his temple. And there were flashes of lightning and sounds and peals of thunder and a great earthquake and a great hailstorm. So there's actually the Ark of the Covenant in heaven. Isn't that, 13:6 talks about the tabernacle. And this is the beast blaspheming against the tabernacle. And he opened his mouth in blasphemies against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, that is, those who dwell in heaven. That's part of the conflict coming up. Yes. And 15, 5 through 8. And after these things I looked, and the temple of the tabernacle of testimony in heaven was opened. And the 7 angels who had the 7 plagues came out of the temple, clothed in linen, clean and bright, and girded around their chests with golden sashes. They sound like priests to me. And then jump down to 8. And the temple was filled with the smoke of the glory of God and from his power, and no one was able to enter the temple until the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were finished. So there's the glory of God in his temple. Let's go to 21. Verse 3. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is among men, and he will dwell among them, and they shall be his people, and God himself will be among them. Okay, that's us. So you really get a picture of that, and it'll give you the chills, you know. He is going to walk among you. Look at verse 22 and 23. And I saw no temple in it, speaking of the New Jerusalem. For the Lord God, the Almighty, and the Lamb are the temple. That's pretty cool. And the city has no need of the sun or the moon to shine on it, for the glory of God is illuminated, and its lamp is the Lamb. Okay, one more. 27. I liked this. I read this lots of times, and I didn't quite get it until I studied Leviticus.
What is it?
21, 27. And nothing unclean, and no one who practices abomination and lying shall ever enter into it, but only those whose names are written in the Lamb's Book of Life. I thought how neat it is that all those things that we studied, this is unclean, and this is unclean, and this is unclean, and none of that will ever be there. We won't accidentally stumble into that. We won't do it on purpose. We won't be an unknown sin. It won't be. It'll never be there. That sounds really nice. So anyway, that's my little thing on the tabernacle. The next thing that happens in the story of Leviticus is actually an event that's going to happen, and it is some guy who is a mixture of an Egyptian and a Jewish. So his mom is Jewish, his dad is Egyptian. I'm thinking that probably happened a lot during slavery, the time when there was slavery there. So this event happens within the first year of the Exodus. So this man who does this is an adult, or he wouldn't be held responsible for this. He's an adult. He went through the Red Sea. If he's the oldest son in the family, then the blood was put over the door to save his life. Then just trying to picture who this person was. His mom's name is given, his dad's name isn't. It gives the impression that his mom and him went on through the Red Sea on the Exodus and his dad didn't, because his dad is not around, or at least he's not mentioned, and the Bible doesn't do it that way. The Bible almost always mentions the father and then sometimes also mentions the mother. So if you only have a mother, so this guy gets in a fight. In the community, in the area, okay? It's not inside the fenced tent, but it's in the camp. He gets in a fight with another guy. But just let me know that here is the holy God, here is sinful man, and they are living in the same spot. This guy gets in a fight, and it's a real bad fight, and he swears terribly by the name of God. You know, it's probably not like when I hear people say this all the time. They stumble over the curb and they say, oh my God, or whatever, you know, and they say that. But it's not, I mean, it's not good. I get that. But it's not as horrible as cursing God, damning God, all that kind of stuff. This guy does something along that level. Now, the other guy in the fight is probably not doing a whole lot of really good stuff either, you know? But he evidently doesn't say that stuff. So people see them, people hear them, and people hear the guy who cursed. And they had just gotten these laws. You will not take the Lord your God's name in vain, okay? They just got that. All right, so we're within the first year or so. They haven't left Sinai yet. And so they go, okay, Moses, what do we do? And they have to put him under arrest, so to speak, confinement. And Moses, who isn't actually, it does say in Exodus what he's supposed to do, but he wants to go talk to God. And that's a good thing. If you are a judge and if you have to evaluate a case and it's a serious case, it would be nice to go, consult with God about what you should do with the case. And so Moses goes and discusses with God about what to do with the case, and God has them take the man outside the camp and has the witnesses stand there. And the witnesses lay their hands on him, and that is to pronounce him guilty. And then the ones who actually heard it, literally, are the ones to throw the first stones. And so they are, but think of the guy who went through the Red Sea, ate the manna, drank from the water from the rock, stood there when the mountain shook and could not handle listening to the voice of God, and still did this. So there's this thing that they're trying to get, God is trying to set a standard. And you have to have sort of a hard line on your standard, or your standard isn't a standard. And it is this, it is fear motivates obedience. Don't you think so? Have you ever thought, if you knew without a shadow of a doubt there were no CHPs on the highway ever, would you stay at the speed limit?
No.
Why are we not staying at the speed? Because fear motivates obedience. Consequences motivate obedience. It's the same with 2-year-olds to 100-year-olds. Fear motivates obedience. If there isn't any fear, if there's no fear of consequences, why do it? Why do it? I've heard people who claim that there is no God and they're atheists, and as it works out in their life, it matters not anything, whatever they do, because there is nothing. And it ends up also being there's no meaning to their life, and they're really tempted to commit suicide. Because it just turns into nothing. So God is laying a standard, and can you imagine what it would be if that was the standard in our country today?
Can't imagine.
Yeah, God is laying a standard, and you cannot. And obviously this guy didn't just accidentally stub his toe and something came out of his mouth that he didn't mean, and I'm so sorry I said that, or, there's a difference there. This is bold and it's determined, and he's not repenting. Otherwise, we wouldn't have, God is fair, and God likes to forgive. So, it's not just like any little thing that goes on. But still, that was the standard. So, blasphemy is serious. And God's holiness is really holy. And we're supposed to have some fear of that. The more I picture God's holiness, the more I have that fear. I really do. And I also, at the same time, have this very strong love relationship. So it's just like, how do these two opposite, mutually exclusive type things work together, which blows my mind that it does. But it's kind of like a really, really, really good father who loves you tremendously, but you don't dare run across him because he's got a belt, and he wears that belt and it's with him all the time, I never got spanked by a belt, but I'm just using that. So, that's what happens to this, and there's, at the same time, he's going to give a lot of other rules for breaking the laws. For instance, he's going to say, if you commit murder, you need to be executed. Okay? You do. All right. The execution is not murder. The execution is justice. I've heard that. I've heard that as arguments in California as to why we need to get rid of the death penalty. Because God says don't murder, we can't do that either. That's not the same. It's not the same at all. That is the, you take a life, you give a life. That's how it goes. And then he's going to go on, and you've heard the thing that goes an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a broken leg for a broken leg, or whatever it is. Okay, that is not personal interaction. That is their justice system. So the judge is supposed to stand there and say, okay, your deeds killed his bull for whatever reason, whatever happened, you have to replace that bull. It's an even thing, okay? Whatever you did, you pay. If you caused a guy's eye to go out because you were throwing rocks, you gotta do, it's an even, and it's not between people. It's not like the guy with the messed up eye is going to come running at you and stab a thing in your eye. That's not what that is. This is a justice thing before a court. And it's the rules of justice. And it does not get lenient on one side and does not get heavier on the other side. Okay, it's just fair, straight up and down. And I loved how it did it. I liked that. And then at the same time, Jesus says to us, someone strikes you on the face, you turn the other cheek. Well, what? And I've heard that, okay, Jesus isn't doing the law at all. I've heard this argument. Have you heard that one? I've heard this one. One is a personal reaction and forgiveness, and one is a legal in court thing. Entirely different situations. So Jesus can say, walk the extra mile, turn the other cheek, forgive us 70 times 7, on and on and on, like that, and still have a fair legal system. So one is on the legal system and one is on what we would call Christian interaction or stuff like that. So I'm only saying that because people have given me these arguments.
So the judge has to determine an equivalent punishment.
Right.
So say the eye causes him to not be able to work
Yes.
much. So he would need to then supplement income.
Something like this.
So it's really an interesting job that those judges had back then.
Yes. It was, yeah.
And how our Supreme Court wrenches over stuff.
Yes. And it was the same rules were for if you were a Jewish citizen. What if you were a foreign person living in the land? Okay? Same rules. The Jewish citizen injures a foreign person, exact same rules. It's fair, upright, straight up, all that. What if you're a poor person and you injure a rich person? Same rules. How do you pull it off? I'm not sure, but you didn't get leeway because you were too poor to pay the debt. It was same rules, and that's justice. That's straight up justice. We don't even know that anymore most of the time, but I mean, just in California, a guy who's committed rape got it set free because, abused children got set free because he reached the age of 70 or 60 or whatever it
It
is.
was 50.
50, as if that's gonna slow him down. So I'm just saying, we don't understand these rules. Is it right for this man to be in jail? This is right for this man to be executed, to be honest with
Yes,
you,
yeah.
because he destroyed lives. You destroy a life, you take a life. But, I'm not in the legislature of California, so I'm not doing that, yeah. God also does distinguish between manslaughter and murder. So you accidentally kill someone. You know, you're riding your cart and the wheel falls off and the horse gets out of control and you're going blah, blah, blah all over the place. And there's a guy walking and you run into him. This actually almost happened to me. There's this corner going to my house that's a blind corner and a very sharp curve. And a nice tiny little 2-lane road. And I'm on the inside doing the right curve. And the guy coming this way is in my lane. Okay? So I am hugging the curb, which isn't a curb, it's like a 2-inch edge of pavement before it goes into dirt. I'm hugging this thing to try not to have a head-on collision. As I bend the corner, there's a runner that I would have hit and killed. I tell you what, this was years ago, I still cannot go around this corner. I would have been guilty of manslaughter by trying to avoid. So there's times like this. So God says, no, that is not up for execution. That's not up for stoning. If the person who was the husband or wife or whatever of the person that was running was very angry, I would have to leave and go to a city, what is it called?
City
No,
of Refuge. Refuge.
City of Refuge, yes. So I would be safe inside the City of Refuge. Unfortunately, I couldn't leave the City of Refuge. So, but I could still continue to live. I have to say, whenever I read stuff like this, that picture flashes through my mind because I'm thinking, only angels protected this runner. Because I was already in, and that runner had no space. I just wish they weren't running on that road, but
It's not illegal.
it's not illegal. So, huh? The angels were protecting me too because I should have been sideswiped by this guy, and which would have thrown me into the runner. So there are times when people killed someone else completely not wanting to. And so that's why I thought of the, carriage with the wheel falls off and whatever. So that was part of the protection there. All right. I guess there's probably more, but I think we'll take a break. So we're on chapter 25, and the God tells the people that when they get into the land, they're going to have another kind of festival, a little bit different, and that's called the Sabbatical year. And their very first year in the land. So where they count this first year, I'm not sure, because it takes Joshua a good 5 years to conquer the land. So maybe we're at the end of those 5 years when that's considered the first year, because that's people are actually in the land without fighting, But so I'm not sure what is the actual first year, but according to these instructions, the first year that you're in the land, and it's probably after Joshua has conquered, because it's all about whether or not they're going to be farming or not. And if you're in the middle of battles and you're fighting, then all your men are not plowing fields. So I'm guessing this is first year of peace in the land after they've conquered the land. But I don't know for sure. Anyway, their very first year is supposed to be a Sabbath year. A Sabbath year means you do not plant food, you do not plant your garden, your fields all year long. Okay? That's a whole year. Now, at first you may go, your first thought is, don't pretend that you are a stonemason or a potter or any of those kind of jobs in Israel. Pretend you are a farmer or a herdsman or a grape grower or olive tree grower, anything that is related to growing. That is your entire income. So God just said, no income for a year. And your first comment would be, well, that's kind of a lot. You know, like, how are we going to eat? How are we going to feed our family? How are we going to pay the rent and the electricity? You know, buy the oil. Of course, the electricity's getting really high. So, but their first year was to be a Sabbath year. They were to give the land rest every 7 years. And from then on, the 7th year, on and on and on and on throughout forever was to be a Sabbath year. No planting that. You could do other work. Let's say your barn needed fixing. You could fix your barn on a Sabbath year. You just couldn't till the ground. Okay? You could make your pots, fix your oven. You could do all that kind of stuff. You could do all that maintenance stuff, but you could not plow the ground, which means you actually don't have income. You could not reap your harvest. So let's say you have a whole orchard, and whether you feed and prune and do all that stuff, and a whole year goes by and you don't, you're still going to get some grapes, right? It's still going to grow. You're still going to get olives from the olive tree. You're going to get figs from the fig tree, all that kind of stuff. You can eat those things, but you cannot market them. And that's what they're for. You cannot make money off of them. They are just to eat and to fall and let the animals get. Is supposed to be a time of rest. And I can see the faith that is involved to carry this out. Because as the father of the family, you got 7 kids, which was common back then, okay? You got 7 kids and you lived in group areas, so you have your brother and his kids and your other brother-in-law and his kids, and you know, you got all this, and you can't earn any money for the year. So that was the Sabbath year, and it was to give the land rest. Okay, so now here's a few presuppositions that come out in this chapter. Number 1, the Israelites don't own the land. God owns the land. Okay? That is perpetual. They never own the land. They are tenant farmers on the land, or tenant citizens on the land. They are sojourners on their own land. God owns the land, and if you were working for a guy and he said, we're not planting this year, you would say, okay. You wouldn't go, oh, wait a minute, I'm going to plant anyway. You don't plant that year because that's what the owner of the land says. And so he's the owner of the land. When they bought and sold land, they bought and sold crops. Okay, so we'll get into this, but if you have to sell your land and you have to sell it for a certain length of time because you need money for whatever reason, and this is the land allotted to your family line, then you didn't actually sell the value of the land. You sold the value of what could grow on the land. So, and it's going to come out like that when we get to the year of Jubilee. But every 7 years they were to have a Sabbath year. And God did something really neat. So you read Leviticus 25 and it has all these details, yes, but in the middle of it it'll say, so, and this is kind of Debbie King's paraphrase, but so, you're worried about what you're going to eat on that 7th year, right? And it actually has a verse that talks about it. So so on the 6th year, God will grow double. So that you will have so much stored up in your barns that you will not be hungry on the 7th year. Now, if that was my promise, I would say, can you imagine how many men would go, we get a year's vacation? And we still have plenty? I'm all in, right? Okay, so every 7th year that happened, it reminded me of manna. Every 6th day, they got twice as much as they were supposed to get, as they needed, so that on the 7th day they had plenty without doing the work of it. It's exactly the same principle. So here's the Sabbath, and you get a sabbatical year. Their first year was a year of rest. They started off with that, and then every 7 years after that. Okay, now, after they get into this mode, they're going to count a set of 7. The 7, first 7, second 7, 7 sets of 7. And then the next year is the 50th year. That's the year of Jubilee. All right, that's a very important year. But you can't plant anything on the year of Jubilee. Okay, now this creates a problem because you couldn't plant anything on year 49, and you can't plant anything on year 50. So that means you're going a spread of almost, and year 51, you got to plant, it's going to be a good several months before that stuff grows. So you're going a spread of almost 3 years without food, right? Well, you can't fast for 3 years. God actually says, I will make it grow 3 years worth of food on the 48th year. So that you will have so much that it will just be, and no, everybody, and it even says everybody will eat their fill. You know how God sort of understates things all over the Bible? Everybody eats their fill doesn't mean like, okay, I got my cracker this morning. Everybody eats their fill means everybody gets plenty of food. You don't have hungry going. And it goes on and on about how incredible this plan is. And if this was offered, if this was offered to the United States and we believed it and we did it, and God, it's not offered to us, we're not the Israelites, but I mean, can you imagine? It's guaranteed prosperity. What a cool thing. That's what this is. It's guaranteed prosperity. Okay, so they have all this to do, and so he says, and in verse 25, this is just a few things I noticed at chapter 25 as I was reading through. First thing he says is, speak to the sons of Israel, oh, this is verse 2, and say to them, when you come into the land which I shall give you. And I thought, that takes us back to the Abrahamic covenant, because it's the land he's going to give them. That's who he promised that to. That is an unconditional covenant. Do you guys know the story about when Abraham had to cut the animals and put them in 2 sides, and they put half of it on the table or bench or whatever was on this side, and half of it on the table or bench that was on this side. And in front was this furnace, this oven, and Abraham goes into a deep sleep, and the oven and the furnace, as far as I picture it correctly, and I remember, passes through. Okay, Abraham did not pass through. Only, that represents God, only God passed through. Now the person who passes through the cut animals in the culture of that time is the one who has to keep the covenant. Okay? Abraham is asleep, watching it in his vision, okay? Only God passes through. This means this is a God-only covenant. No matter what happens, God must do this, or he's no longer God, because he just broke his word. So if you are going, and you're standing there listening to Moses say, when the Lord gives you the land that he has promised, all this should fly through your memory. Okay, so I'm thinking, all right, We are only about 2 months, 3 months short of Kadesh Barnea. You guys know what happened at Kadesh Barnea? Kadesh Barnea is the southern city, southern area of the area of Israel, the area of Canaan, where they all camped, and Moses sent in the 12 spies. All right? 10 of them come at, they go in, the people in the land are notoriously strong for defending their land. You've got Anakim, those are equivalent to giants in the area of Hebron, I think. You've got all this all over. You got, from a human point of view, you would say this is an impossible task. There's no way we can conquer this land. There's 2 guys who say, well, wait a minute. Don't we have the Abrahamic covenant sitting over here where God promised to give us this land? Regardless of how big and strong and arrows and chariots and armies and walls and all these things that tactically make it impossible for them to win the land, right? So the 10 go back and say, no, we can't do this. And the 2 go back and basically chew out the 10 for saying that, and then the people get to vote. And you guys all know how they voted. And I was thinking, they just heard him say, well, a few months earlier, they heard him say, speak to the sons of Israel and say to them, when you come into the land which the Lord your God will give you. Sometimes we don't listen to the promises. When we live our lives as if, oh yeah, I forgot about that promise. That's what hit me. Whatever they are. Well, I've told this before, but there was one time right after my husband died where I park a ways from the house, okay? You have to get out of the house, out of the car and walk, I don't know, 30 yards to the house. Okay, it's no big deal. I've done it for 40 years, okay? No problem at all. Daytime, nighttime, rain, storm, anything. But after he died, I was afraid to get out of my car and walk in the dark to an empty house that's all dark. I never had that fear before. Brand new fear. And my little granddaughter looks at me and says, when I am afraid, I will put my trust in you. And I thought, you're right. Yeah. Ouch. Yeah. Grandma, didn't you teach me that? Yeah, I think I did. Yeah. So we tend to forget our promises. And that one resonates over every time I start to get a fear thing, that I was never a fearful person. I got a new set of fears when I became a widow. I just got a whole new set of fears. And so I use that one a lot. It's nice, little short, little simple, easy. And the little one can tell it to you. Little child can tell it to you. So I was thinking that they forgot their promise, which is why they didn't get to enter. Not only does God own the land, God owns the people. You see, it says that, and if you read through this, every time he gives a law, he'll go, you're going to do it this way, and then he'll say, because I am the Lord your God who purchased you out of Egypt. All right? And then he's going to give a new law, and he doesn't have the word because. I'm interpreting the word because in here. He might say for, but because I am the Lord your God who purchased you out of Egypt. So he goes, you are going to treat other people right. Because I am the Lord your God who purchased you out of Egypt, you were treated wrong, and I rescued you from that. You're not going to do that again. And you start to read past the details of okay, pick it up this way and turn it over this way and put the incense on this way, stuff like that, and you get into the point of it. Not that those things aren't important, they are. But all the way through, I am the Lord your God who purchased you out of Egypt. Another thing is when someone purchases a slave, that slave becomes their slave. That's how that works. You are now the owner of the slave. And that is part of their covenant. They are his servants, and the word servant and the word slave in Greek is the same word, and the word servant and the word slave in Hebrew is the same word. Okay? Even people who translate our Bibles for us can call us, they can call us servants of Christ. We can't, it's just like they can't use the word slave. One time I read a book by John MacArthur called Slave. Have you read that? That really hit deep in me. And the cool thing is I will get into all this in just a minute, but Paul calls himself the slave. And it's translated bondservant. A bondservant is a servant who agrees to permanently be a man's servant or slave. Like, there is no freedom. Okay, that will stay forever. And the value of being that kind of slave is in the slave owner. Whoever is the slave owner creates the value of that slave. And when I realized that really I am a slave of Christ, then I was able to stop fighting my own freedom so much. Because a slave basically doesn't have free will. A slave has to do everything the owner says. Yes.
I can't remember exactly where it is, but when I was reading through the Old Testament, there's a really beautiful verse that says, where God tells Moses, I think, I have broken the bars of your yoke and made you walk erect.
Yes.
And I love that because there is the idea of being his slave, his servant,
Right.
but that he gives us this right to stand tall under him.
Yes, that's the value of the slave owner. Whereas the slave owners in Egypt were not of value. The value of our slave owner is such that he is going to take us. If you follow the train, I'm jumping ahead in my notes, but if you follow the train of thought, we are a slave. And then Jesus says, I will no longer call you slaves, I will call you friends. So we are now friends. And if you read Romans chapter 8, Paul will say, you are no longer slaves, you are adopted sons. And then he says, if you are adopted sons, you are heirs. I mean, look at the progression. In here, we get to submit our will to him. In here, we get to be best friends. In here, we are so qualified to be an adopted son in their culture was such a high honor. It wasn't rescue of children that were orphans. It was, who do I pick to succeed me in my business? Who will be the next emperor? Who will lead after me? I mean, it's that kind of quality. And whoever is, sometimes it's who gets to be, if you're not the adopted son, you're not the heir. A lot of people adopted their own sons to designate them as the heir. So when God purchased our freedom and purchased us, because we are purchased, look at the progression. I just love it. I tell you what, the idea that I wake up every day saying, I'm your slave, what do you want me to do today? Just fixes my day. Because it means I'm trying very hard to determine his will and follow his will. And at the end of the day, when I've done that, I've had the best day. I got this done and this done. I got to talk to this person. One time, I was like, okay, yes, I know you want me to go to their house. I know you want me to go sitting down that dinner. This is not related to our church or anything like that. I know I'm tired, but I know I'm supposed to go visit there and be an extended visitor at their house. I walk in the door, and within 10 minutes, the lady of the house is sitting with me crying, pouring out her heart, because she needed someone to talk to. By the time I leave, another guy is sitting there needing to discuss theology. And he brings up Calvinism and Arminianism, and he brings up all these things, and he goes, I just need to talk. And I go back home and I finally go, you know, God, I really should not argue with your plan. I really should not just say, I just don't feel like doing that today. Can you give me a different job? Because that was one of the most fulfilling days. So it's just a different way of looking at it. When I look at my life as the slave, then all this happens too. It's really beautiful. So, if the great thing about the sabbatical year is in Israel, if you got yourself in debt for whatever reason, your crops didn't grow that year, you didn't have a good year, you're in debt, you need to borrow money, and it's not a Sabbath year, it's not the 6th year, so you're not getting double, it's just a regular year, and you're in debt, you can sell your land to someone for the value of however many crops there are between that current year, wherever you are, and the next sabbatical year. So if you've got 15 years left, you've got 15 years of value of crops, that's what your land is worth. And if you've got 48 years left, then you're in, but you also lose your land for 48, that whole time, okay? So you can sell your land to make that at the year of Jubilee, it all goes back. So you only borrow money or sell to the value of that at that time, because it all goes back to the original owner, which is the original leaser under God owning the land, right? Get that? Okay, so that could happen. If it's worse than that, you could sell yourself as a slave to someone else for the same duration. And if you did get sold yourself as a slave to the same duration, there's a huge list of instructions on what the buyer has to treat you. The buyer cannot treat you like a slave in Egypt. The buyer has to treat you like a hired servant, okay? So there's a difference there. But you still are required. It's not like you can go, I'm going to work for 4 years and then I'm going to quit. No, you do it in value up to the year of Jubilee. Okay? So that happened there was a lot of rules on how does the slave master treat the slaves. And it was very specific. And it goes through and tells you you have to treat them. You cannot overwork them, you cannot be cruel to them, you have to, on and on. And it is kind of as a picture of how God treats us as a slave master. And it's a beautifully done picture of how that, and you get to the end of that time, and then you get to go back. Now, if you're the owner, and you buy this family, because often it was the whole family. It was the father, the wife, the sons, everything. You buy this family, and then you die before the year of Jubilee. You can pass them on to your son, and who will carry it on until the year of Jubilee. But it always goes back in the year of Jubilee.
Is that still the tradition or the law today?
In Israel? I have no clue. I have no clue. I do know that there's a really cool thing in the midst of this. So let's say you have come on really, really hard times, and you sell your land, and you and your whole family now are slaves or servants of someone else, okay, however you want to call it, and you have a relative who's quite well off, that relative can pay your debt for you and buy you back. Okay, so what he does is he pays, like let's say you sold yourself for 27 years, okay, because that's how much time is left before the year of Jubilee, and you're into it 5 years, so you still have 22 years left. He can pay the balance of the 22 years and get you back. That's called a kinsman redeemer. And he can redeem you back and give you your life back. If he wants, I mean, he has a choice. He can do that if he wants to. And that's a thing that goes on. There are also a lot of rules in general that help prevent all this. For one thing, if it was their rule that if you, in general in the society, that if you knew someone was having a hard time, you're supposed to help them out. You're not supposed to let people go hungry. You're supposed to be kind to widows and orphans. Widows and orphans had the hardest time because people lived in family units. And if the widow has no son, then that widow has no family unit. And generally speaking, women didn't make money. So she would be very, very poor. And so and the same thing happened with orphans. It's not like they would have, maybe families would take them in, but maybe they were just roaming, you know. So, or stealing off of crops, or picking the produce at the end of the fields, stuff like that. But so they were special rules to always be kind to widows and orphans, which always hit me because James, the brother of Jesus, who was raised very, very Jewish, talks about how we care for widows and orphans. So I thought that was really, they didn't have Social Security. So widows couldn't get Social Security from their husband's previous income to help them through life after he died. So that was that there to do also, just to let you know that that was also in there. But it got really, really hard up, and the family got really hard up, and they had to sell their land. They could be redeemed by a kinsman. That's the story of Ruth and Boaz. You probably know that. Whoever's the closest kinsman gets the first shot at it. And in that case, it was part of the deal was to take her as a wife to have children, to perpetuate the line, okay? And the closest kinsman didn't want to do that. He didn't mind buying the land and redeeming the land, but he didn't want the responsibility of a wife. I don't know if that's another wife or a wife. I don't know what that one is. So that's where Boaz comes into the story, and he becomes the perfect picture of the kinsman redeemer, which is a picture of Jesus Christ. There's only one other story of the kinsman redeemer that I know of in the Bible that I've found so far, and that is Jeremiah. And it's the year probably 587 BC, like 1 year before 586 BC. You guys know what happened in 586 BC? That's when Nebuchadnezzar destroyed Jerusalem. Okay? Now, in the last couple of years, or 18 months, or whatever, prior to that time, which is the time in which this story takes place, the city of Jerusalem is under siege. And there's very little food, and all those horrible things that are described that will happen under siege are happening in Jerusalem right now. And Jeremiah has been standing there talking to the king, which I think is Zedekiah, or maybe you might have to check that one. And he's saying, you guys need to realize that Nebuchadnezzar's going to win. And of course, they don't believe that, so they're fighting on to the end. And he says, if you give in now, you will at least be taken captive, but you won't all be killed. You know, it's to your benefit. And they get so mad at him, they throw him in the pit, which is not really a pit, it's really a well. that is dry, except for the mud. And he is sinking and drowning. Did I tell this story to you guys
Yes.
already?
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, when he gets out, I thought so. I'm thinking, who did I tell this story to? When he gets out, he gets the notice that he has a brother or a cousin or something like that who has land over in Benjamin that needs to be got back. All right. Jeremiah's question to God is, why? And God tells him to go buy this. Why should I redeem the land when you just told me Nebuchadnezzar's destroying this place within the next 12 months? And God says, go redeem that land. Okay, there's hardly any food. I mean, he may have enough money, but there's no food to buy. So if he takes his money and he goes, it's quite a bit of silver, and he goes and he redeems the guy's land. Now, what is Jeremiah going to do with the land? He can't do anything with the land. And he goes, so why am I going to redeem the land? And you go through all this whole long chapters, I think it's 34, and in Jeremiah, and you get to the end, and God says, because people are going to come back, and they are going to plant again. And he's basically saying, because I am going to redeem the land. So he has Jeremiah do this as a picture of God's promise of bringing them back again, which I thought was just really, really cool. So there's redeeming the land, and I don't even know where I am. I'm going all over the place. Okay. I think that's most of it. Land is never sold permanently. If you want to know where it says that God has purchased us, I think that's 1 Corinthians 6, 19 and 20 maybe. And that we belong to Him. And it's in words that use do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have from God, and that you are not your own? That's a huge statement. For you have been bought with a price. Therefore glorify God in your body. There's a song that I've heard called I Am Not My Own. I belong to Him. It's just a beautiful song. I would love to put it in the kids' lessons. But so I am not my own. I belong to Him, and that helps me with my identity more than it sounds like. If you said that to someone who didn't have a Christian perspective on life, that would sound like horrible. But to me, that sounds wonderful. To know that it's not just me. I am not my own. He actually wanted me so much that He purchased me. And, you know, you've heard stories when some guy in some place saves another guy's life, and that guy gives him his life, he serves him for the rest of his life because he's in gratefulness because he didn't die. Okay, that's how I feel. And I will do that. I will serve Him in that. So we could get into the beginning of next week's, which is lesson 8. Oh, I know what I forgot to tell you. There is no record in the Old Testament of them ever celebrating the sabbatical year. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. There's no record in them of them ever celebrating the year of Jubilee. Although in Jeremiah's day, right at the very, very end, there's one point where Jeremiah is talking to the king and they said, okay, we'll set the slaves free. And they do. But then in about a week or so, they bring them back. So that violates that. It's a cool thing when Jesus is talking in Nazareth the beginning of his ministry, and he's presenting to his friends and family where he grew up who he is. And he quotes from Isaiah 61. He says, I have come to set the prisoners free. And that has a little bit of reflection back to the year Jubilee. Because they never did the Sabbath years, the sabbatical years, they collected them up. God collected up the sabbatical years, and he said that there were 70. 70 times. So they went for every 7 years times 70 would be 140 years. If you go from the beginning of the monarchy, which is about King Saul, to 586, you get approximately, you get close, I think it's like 570 or something like, you get close to 490 years. And Jeremiah says, you are going into exile for 70 years because you owe God the sabbatical years. And that's why it's exactly 70 years. I'm not sure if it's because it's lunar years, but it doesn't add up in my mathematics exactly right to any starting point that ends right there, okay? However, it could be a picture of a complete, you owe me this complete time. Because when Jesus is talking to Peter and Peter says, so how many times do I forgive my brother? He goes, you forgive him 70 times 7. And in The Chosen, it's so cute because Peter starts trying to add it up. I bet you I can come up with that many times. Because he was so mad at Matthew. And he's trying to add this up. And Jesus looks at him and he goes, I'm trying to tell you, you do it indefinitely. You don't keep track of it. That's the point of it. You know, you don't really keep track of when you get to 490 forgivenesses on one person, which, by the way, if you've been married, that would not be that hard for you. It's not that you count them up and get to that point. It's that, so, and some people have claimed that the 70 sabbatical years are that picture. It's a picture of them owing all of this, the whole package, to God. So he picked 7 years. I don't, decide, I'm telling you, I'm not, it's on my list. I've got all kinds of little details like this. And, but from the day they were conquered in 586 to the day the temple was rebuilt was 70 years. From the day the temple was destroyed to the day the temple was rebuilt. Now, did they get to go back earlier than that? Yes, they did, because they have to be back there to build it. Okay, so they weren't in Babylon. Actually, most of them never went back. The vast majority of them never went back. Only a few went back in comparison to the total number. I think like maybe 30,000 went back, and that was way, way, way down from what was there. So Daniel didn't get to go back, but Cyrus the Great issued the decree, and then they can rebuild the temple. But so it's rebuilt in 516. So it was exactly 70 years. So that's why one reason why they were in exile all that time. There's more reasons, but that's one. All right, that might be the end of what I had. Do you guys have any questions? Look at you silent.
No, it's good.
You pointed out, fear motivates obedience. After you get through here, love motivates obedience.
That's what I was thinking.
Yes. Now we're at here, but we got to start off with, as little children, you got to start off, you got to have consequences. And that's coming up really quick. If there are not consequences to the rules, you don't obey the rules. You just don't. So you need both consequences and you need reward. You need reward to motivate you to do it. You need consequences to motivate you to not disobey it. And that's what the next chapter is about, reward and consequences. Dear Father in heaven, I thank you for this time in Leviticus. I thank you that your laws are just and fair. I thank you that you have purchased me as your slave, have made me your friend, have adopted me as your adopted son, and you have made me an heir of your kingdom. It blows my mind. I should still be in slavery to the wicked slave owner, and you have loved me so much to do that. I thank you you've done that for all of us, and I ask us to help us remember that and think about that and just be in awe of you and your love and your kindness, and have a little bit of fear so that we can make sure we obey. In Jesus' name, amen.